So I hope everyone ay nakapagpasa na ng quiz 2, no? Kasi kinlose ko na yung submissions niya. I think kompleto naman siya kanina nung sinilip ko. Hindi ko lang na tagalan yung browse kung lahat is may naka-attach. Pero parang lahat naman is may naka-attach, no? So always check kung na-attach ba talaga yung activities nyo pag sasubmit kayo. Okay, so before we start with the new topic, I would just like to do a quick revisit do sa quiz 1 and quiz 2 nyo. Okay? Yan. Hindi ko muna siya full screen kasi pag naka full screen ako, yung itong Google Meet na tab ko, nag-sleep siya. Tapos wawala siya. Okay? So, ganyan muna. Kailangan kita siya sa screen para hindi siya mag-sleep. Okay? So, the quiz 1, ito muna, mabilis. Hindi ko siya discuss in detail. Gusto ko lang siyang pasadahan. So, the quiz 1, first item, given naman yung masses. Yung masses na capital MG, that's megagram. So, since yung formulas natin is naka-kilogram, you have to convert that to kilogram. Okay? So, I hope you know how to do that. And then, ito yung sinasabi ko last time. Pag nagsosolve tayo ng gravitational attraction, that is always the direct distance between the two objects that you are analyzing. Okay, so for this case, AT and plane, so you should be getting this R. Okay, not yung 20 feet directly. Okay, so you need to use that as well as the 39,000 feet elevation to solve for R using Pythagorean theorem. Okay, after that, you convert your feet to meters, no? Since naka-SI yung ating formula, then tsaka mo siya ipa-plug in dun sa GM1 M2 over R squared. Should be getting 1.87 times 10 to the negative 11 tons. For number 2 naman, ito yung unit etiquette, no? So, most of you naman nakuha to. Sorry. Any question ba sa item 1 and item 2?
Wala naman po.
Okay, so for the vectors, hindi ko nasunulat dito yung solution triangles ko, but this should be how yung final answers nyo would look like. No? So, meron tayong magnitude, meron ding angle. Tapos, since graphical method to, the angle that you would use would be the acute angle with respect to the horizontal. Okay, I think may nag-solve na horizontal naman. Pero itong kabila yung pinakita niya, yung obtuse angle. Okay, for graphical method, I mean, sa Cartesian kasi, dun tayo nag-anchor sa positive x-axis. Okay, pero kung yung graphical trigonometric method, we always anchor it to sa closest axis na prescribed. For example, since this is prescribed na horizontal axis, then yung angle na closest to sa horizontal axis natin. Okay? And this one naman sa dulo is yung kinukuha yung resulta, yung components along u-axis and v-axis. Okay, so any question po sa quiz 1?
Wala po.
Okay, so after nyan, quiz 2, solution. No? So ito naman, halos kaya nyo naman siyang gawin actually. So I just want to solve pasadahan. No, labas natin yung tanong. Ito yung questions.
And so far po.
Ano yun? May tanong ba?
Wala po, sir.
Okay, so one, find the resultant angle form of the vector C. Okay. So vector C is 9i plus 2j. So we convert that into vector form, which is for the magnitude portion, we get I squared plus j squared. And we get 9.2195. And for the angle naman, we get the tangent inverse of j over I. Okay, so we get 12.5288. And then you need to check again the sign or kung saan quadrant papatak yung 12.5288 mo. And since I is positive and j is positive, we conclude that this would fall on the first quadrant, to sa plus I plus j quadrant. So yung 12.5288 siya na yung angle with respect to positive x-axis. Okay? If ever yung solution nyo does not fall to the first quadrant, then dun kayo magsosolve for the equivalent angle with respect to positive x-axis. So your solution here would be C. Tama, vector C pala. Vector C, that's 9.22, 12.53 since I prescribed na two significant decimal digits. Any question po dito? So pag nag-check ako dito, diretso similar sa quiz 1, diretso na sa sagot. Walang partial answers to. And I would only consider answers that are plus minus 0.1 from these values. So plus minus 0.1 ng 9.22 tsaka plus minus 0.1 ng 12.53. Yung tolerance for the correct answer. For number 2, that is find A plus B minus C minus D in Cartesian form. Okay, so naka-Cartesian form na naman yung vectors natin. So you just have to do the algebra. Taking into account, ang challenge nyo dito again is yung arithmetic. Kasi possible na magkamali kayo because of the signs. Okay, especially yung may negative sa labas, tapos negative sa loob, or negative sa labas, positive sa loob, tapos hindi nyo ma-apply properly. But eventually, you should get 24i plus minus 24j minus 34k. For item number 3, find the angle between vectors A and B. Okay, so the ultimate formula for that is ito, cosine inverse A dot B over magnitude of A, magnitude of B. Okay, so we solve for the dot product A dot B. Again, for dot product, you just multiply the like terms of your vectors and add those products afterwards. Okay, so you should be getting for A dot B, negative 276. And yun na siya, scalar value siya. So wala siyang I or J. For the magnitude naman of A and B, you just have to get the square root of the products, of the squares pala. Okay, so it's 24 squared, negative 33 squared, and negative 15 squared, and square root for A, same with B, for using negative 2, 11, and negative 9. So you should get 43.474 and 14.353 respectively. Then using that, dun sa formula ng angle, you should be getting 116.25 degrees. Okay, so mapapansin nyo dito, I used more decimal digits dun sa values na intermediate. Okay, that's okay. Basta kailangan yung final answer nyo would be 2 digits, 2 decimal places lang. So you can use 4 maybe decimal digits dun sa mga solutions nyo until you get to the final answer. Para sure kayo na yung first 2 decimal digits would be consistent with my solution key or yung kodigo ko for the correct answer. Tapos may tolerance pa rin naman na plus minus 0.1. So, kung malayo yung sagot nyo, malayo talaga. Hindi na siya rounding off problem. Okay, so questions po. Wala po. So,
Wala po.
yes. So 4 and 5 naman, are just cross products. No? So again, you can use the method na tinuro natin sa class, or if you know the matrix way, basically matrix way is ganito rin naman, yung arrangement lang on how it is written down. Iba, kasi ma-systematic yun. Pero may form kasi siya. Okay, so but ultimately for number 4, your A cross B should be 462I plus 246J plus 198K. And for number 5, that's 110I plus 119J plus 121K. Okay, so any question po for quiz 2 overall?
Wala naman po.
Okay, so we're done with that. We start with yung discussion natin today. So all of our discussion kasi until now revolves around the concept of vectors. So it's still theoretical in nature or hindi pa talaga siya yung application ng engineering application natin. Mathematical pa siya or physics-based. Okay? So today we would be applying, well actually hindi pa naman today, but we would be discussing the concept of equilibrium of a particle and see where those vector operations will apply to this equilibrium of particle. Okay? So ganito ko muna siya i-slides kasi nga napuputol kanina sa class na una, napuputol yung connection pag naka full screen. Kaya I need to keep this edge tab within my screen para hindi siya mawala. So first, we would define and understand the conditions for equilibrium. And second, discuss free body diagram elements. Okay, so before that, yung 3-minute spotlight muna natin. Hindi muna ako nag-assign this week. Ako muna yung una. Okay. So ganito siya mangyayari para pag online class, yung sa simula before we discuss, mayroon magsasalita to share anything. Anything yan. Doesn't have to be health related or safety related. It could be just you sharing any random event that happened in your life or some realization or milestone that happened in your life or anything you want to share. So for this week, ako muna. For me, hindi lang siya sa start ng meeting. Minsan maglalagay din ako, we would have 2 or 3 people assigned for a day and split ko sila throughout the discussion. So sila na yung mag-icebreaker sa atin para hindi tayo dire-diretsong test. Okay, for me, ang gusto kong i-share is ito. I understand that as students, most of you experience, siguro ngayon wala pa masyado, but pag nagsimula na yung middle of the semester, tsaka yung dulo ng semester, we start facing some mental challenges or school challenges that can affect our mental health, our mental well-being. Okay? Some of us are capable or are able to handle this better than the others. Others naman, iba-iba tayo ng how to deal with it. So, sometimes we can do it on our own, pero sometimes we need help. And it takes courage minsan to ask for help because we feel like it's something that we need to solve by ourselves. Okay? Like na hindi natin dapat ini-involve ang ibang tao sa problema natin because they have problems on their own and bakit natin sila idadamay, hindi naman nila tayo dinadamay sa problema nila. We are afraid we'll be toxic to them if we share our problems, etc. Okay? But I think that's the purpose of having people around. Okay? Having people around is not just para masaya pag may masaya. Okay? They're also there if we have challenges. They're also people who we can tap or talk to when we have challenges. And sometimes, hindi laging kailangan. Kung sino yung may kailangan ng help, siya lagi yung mag-reach out. Okay? Minsan, if you value the people around you, you have to check on them regularly. And we can do that by asking the question, are you okay? Okay, so once in a while, your friends, your family, pag nakikita nyo na something might be wrong with them, something is changing with them, there's no harm in asking, are you okay? Okay? So when you ask someone, halimbawa may nakita nyo, oy, ito si tahimik to dati ang kulit-kulit nito. Or parang tahimik naman talaga siya, pero parang ngayon, dumidistansya na siya sa akin. Okay? You start by asking, are you okay? Okay? Dalawa yung sasagot niya. Depende sa kung gaano kayo ka-close or kung gaano siya ka-open about his or her feelings. Most ng sagot, for most, even ako, the most likely sasagot ko, no, hindi, dito ako, sa yes, I'm fine. Ito yung madalas ko isasagot. Even if there's something wrong, dito mo tayo sa yes, I'm fine. When that person says yes, I'm fine, pero feeling mo talaga they are not. There's something changing, there's something different. You follow that up with some words of assurance that you are there for them. So you can say, it's just that parang iba ka na lately, parang tahimik mo lang kasi. Or parang hindi ka na masyado sumasama. Okay? That gives them the idea that you are concerned with them and that you are not watching, but you are conscious of their existence. Okay? They're not just, kasi di mo lang sila kasama, you are actually conscious na nandun sila. And you are noticing different changes or changing moods or behavior nila. Okay? Next, you can also say, teka lang mawala to. You can always say, always here if you want to chat. Okay? Hindi man sila mag-share sa'yo ngayon, you can force them and you should not force them to share. You just give them the assurance that once we're ready, you're here to listen. Okay? And you can say, is there something else you'd rather talk to? Is there someone else you'd rather talk to? Okay? Accept, it's not wrong. Kasi minsan may mga tao talaga na sa kanila tayo comfortable. And minsan, hindi yun yung taong lumalapit para mag-extend ng effort for us. Okay? So, it's not safe to say, it's not wrong to ask na, if ayaw mo mag-share sa akin, if ayaw mo mag-open up sa akin, mag-open up ka kay ganito kasi alam ko mas close kayo. Okay? So, the point here is you help them to think about their options on who to talk to. Okay? Kasi minsan hindi nila sa sobrang dami nila iniisip, hindi nila naisip, ay, pwede mo nga pala kausapin yung kapatid ko about this. Or siguro nga, pwede nga pala kausapin ko si nanay about this. Okay, so you help them process. You don't force them. You help them process their options. Okay? Kaya kung close mo or comfortable sa yung person, they would admit to you na no, I'm not okay. Okay, then that's when you'd go to dig a deeper. So what's been happening ba? Ano ba nangyayari? Ano ba nararamdaman mo? Okay? Most of the time, you don't have to actually answer. You just have to listen and they just have to magkwento lang sila na magkwento. Okay, kasi saying it out aloud helps them process their thoughts than just thinking about it. And minsan, hindi lang nila ma-process kasi they don't have someone to talk to about it. Next, have you been feeling this way for a while? Okay, this helps the person kasi understand ano ba yung naka-trigger nito. Yung huli ba natin quiz 1, na-trigger ka ba nun? Nagsimula ba to nung hindi na tayo nag-face-to-face online? Okay? In identifying the triggers, you tend to get a sense of what to do then to not may hindi naman sa solve pero siguro to lessen the burden on that person. Okay. Next is, of course, you have to always say or extend your assurance that you are there for them. I'm ready to listen if you want to talk to. Right? And yun nga, huwag mo silang pipilitin na mag-share. You just have to always express your availability and your conscious, consciously, you make yourself available for them when you need them. Okay? Then after during this conversation, you always listen with an open mind. whatever they're sharing may be too personal for them, but they trusted to open that up to you. Minsan din nagshe-share sila ng things that you may not agree to, or iba yung pananaw mo about those things. Okay? But just listen with an open mind. You don't have to say they're right, they're wrong. You just have to listen about what they are thinking about, and because everything naman that they're feeling is valid, even if that does not make sense to you. Okay, it's there. What's correct for you may not be the correct thing for everyone. So always listen with an open mind. Next is to encourage action and over support. So how can I help? No, ask them. Pero wag kang pala desisyon na, alam ko na, kailangan mong magganito, ganyan. Ay, alam mo, kailangan mong kausapin sa ganito. Kasi alam niya yung gagawin sa ganyan. Okay, you don't have to solve their problems. And because what the solutions you may be thinking may not be work for them. Maybe it worked for you in the past, but you don't have to impose. But you can offer. Okay? Pwede mo sabihin, na-try mo na ba? Have you considered doing this and that? Because when I was feeling that way, this worked for me. Okay? You can offer, but ultimately it's their decision to choose what they do. Yeah, so have you thought about seeing your doctor? Okay? Laging question mark. Laging nasa kanila yung choice. You're just offering choices or helping them formulate choices. And what would help take the pressure off. Okay? Or siguro, hindi ko man ma-solve, anong pwede kong gawin to help you? Okay? Question mark lagi yan lahat. Because the responsibility or the action must come from the person. You're just helping them process everything. Okay? And of course, make time to check in. Nakausap mo siya today, nakausap kayo, siguro may mga itatry siyang things na napag-usapan nyo, then let's chat again next week. Or sige, meet ulit tayo next week. Check on them once in a while if they are being better or if it is getting worse, so you would know where to, if you need to ask more help for other persons. Okay, so this is I like this one because there is a time then that even me, I thought I was okay, no? Pero deep inside, there are a lot of things na ini-ignore ko. Parang I'm just not ignoring, pero itinatago ko siya for pagiging busy or sa tutulog or gusto ko lagi may ginagawa because tinatakasan ko yung problems. Until some person or people reach out and really ask if I am okay. Then parang, when they ask that, parang makakatakas ka pa ba? Tinanong ka na. Yun yung na-feel ko that time. So parang, since I trust that person, I start opening things. And it really helped me feel better about myself. So I know for you, especially sa inyong mga kabataan, you're more open to your feelings. So this would be more, I feel, would be more easier for you than our generation. Generation kasi namin talaga, hindi ganito, naturally. So we tend to be more rigid and more, ang tawag siya, parang matigas sa ulo namin. Ayaw namin na masyado kaming emotional. However, I know it will take a toll on us if we do not process it. And sometimes we just need a kausap to process it. Okay? So wag laging puro joke time pagkasama ang mga bata. Minsan, kumustahin nyo rin sila seriously. Because barkada naman hindi lang yan sa saya, sa kulitan, of course, or also need each other as support group for all your life challenges. Okay, so yun po aking share for today. Okay, so any question po? Question talaga. Pero any comments to that? Okay, so kung wala na, 30 minutes agad yun. Bilis lang. Anyway, so we go to our next topic, which are the conditions of an equilibrium of a particle. Okay? So, punta na tayo dun sa remember our course is titled Statics of Rigid Bodies. Okay, and in the core of that statics of rigid bodies is finding equilibrium or assuming equilibrium of a particle. Okay, so to say that a particle is in equilibrium, it means that particle should remain at rest if originally at rest siya, or kung gumagalaw naman siya, it should have a constant velocity. A constant velocity implies that hindi siya wala siyang acceleration, which means kung anong speed niya or velocity niya, it does not change. Hindi siya bumabagal, hindi siya bumibilis. Okay? Constant lang siya forever. Okay? If that is the case, then you can say that your particle is in equilibrium. Okay? Okay? Equilibrium. However, for our statics discussions, magfo-focus tayo dun sa concept that equilibrium means object is at rest. Okay? Equilibrium rin kasi yung object has a constant velocity, but our discussion would assume that our objects are at rest. Okay? Now, to maintain equilibrium, it is necessary to satisfy Newton's first law of motion. Okay? Which requires the resultant force acting on a particle to be equal to zero. Okay? Ibig sabihin ng resultant force acting on the particle equal to be zero, pwedeng may nag-a-act na force dun sa system natin or sa particle natin, but their resultant, the combined effect of those forces, dapat mag-equal to zero. Okay, so what does this mean? So remember yung first law, it says a body in motion remains in motion, or a body at rest remains at rest unless acted upon by a force. Okay? So as long as a body in motion remains in motion, or a body at rest remains at rest, is that this condition is met, your body is in equilibrium. Now, if there would be a force, unless it is acted upon by a force or an external force affects it, then mawawala na siya sa equilibrium. Now, the concept of it is pwede namang may force. But if the summation of all those forces would be equal to zero, then you would have a zero effect or zero net impact dun sa object mo. And it will remain to be in equilibrium. Okay? If your summation of forces would not be equal to zero, then magkakaroon ka ng net force or resultant force that would cause your object or particle to move. If it is not moving, it will cause it to move. Or if it is moving already, it would cause it to accelerate. And if that happens, wala na sa equilibrium yung object. So to maintain equilibrium, yung kahit applyan mo yan ng 100 forces, okay lang. Basta ang mahalaga, their summation would be equal to zero. And dito papasok yung mga vector operations na discuss natin. Most specifically, yung addition and subtraction. Because you can add and subtract all your forces, but to reach equilibrium, you need to have a resultant force of zero. Kahit ilan pa yan, dapat mag-zero out yan para mag-equilibrium. Okay? Questions po?
Wala po.
sir.
Then we go to the second. The second law states that force is equal to mass times acceleration. Okay? Remember that our goal, again, kahit maraming forces yan, our summation should equal to zero. Okay? And since force equals mass times acceleration, so pag pinaltan ko yung force dito ng mass times acceleration, then you get MA should equal to zero. Okay? Yung mass ng object, hindi natin yan mababago. Okay? Kung ano yung timbang mo, not timbang, weight pala yon. But kung ano yung mass mo, yun na yun. Okay, hindi siya magbabago, hindi siya nababawasan, hindi siya nadadagdagan on its own. But the acceleration part, para maging zero yung m times a, kailangan yung acceleration part mag-zero. Okay? Ibig sabihin, for all our problems, we are assuming that acceleration is zero para ma-meet yung first law and yung second law of motion. Okay? So, wala po sa ating discussion na acceleration at all costs. Pero may mass tayo. Most of the time, meron naman tayo mass. Okay? The third law naman states for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay? Which means, to meet equilibrium, this summation of f equal to 0 needs to be met always. Okay? So, if during your solving, nagkaroon ka ng net force, to maintain equilibrium, there will exist an equal and opposite reaction force dun sa net force na nasosolve mo. Okay? Later on kasi, most of our problem, kasi possible mag-iba-iba yung force na ina-apply mo sa isang object. However, if that object remains at equilibrium, or basically, if the summation of forces remains zero, kahit bago-bago yung ina-apply mo na force, it means within that system, merong nag-a-adjust na equal and opposite reaction na bumabalance or kumokontra dun sa ina-apply mo na force. And there will come a point in our discussion na we will solve for these reaction forces. Okay? That keeps our system in equilibrium kahit pa iba-iba or kahit nag-a-adjust tayo ng applied force. Okay? So, any question muna up to this point? The concept of equilibrium.
None po, sir.
Okay. So, dito na papasok yung free body diagram. So, free body diagram is a diagram of vectors that we use to identify and account yung mga force vectors na nag-exist or nag-act on sa object natin. So, we need to account for all the known and unknown forces which acts on the particle. Okay? I want to emphasize yung act on the particle. Okay? Pwede mo kasi i-analyze yung system mo na hindi sa particle nag-a-act yung forces mo. Okay? So, nagpa-matter kung ano yung reference particle or reference object na ina-analyze mo dun sa system. Okay? You will see this later on. May example tayo about that. And that drawing that shows the particle with all the forces acting on it, that's called the free body diagram. Okay? So for the free body diagram, laging forces ang nandyan. Okay? So we need to identify all the forces acting on your particle. Minsan explicitly sinabi that that force is acting on the system, on the particle. Pero minsan, it is assumed na merong force na yon, pero hindi na siya ini-state or binibigay sa problem. Okay, so you should be always able to identify yung mga forces na yon. Okay? So we go to the type of supports or forces. Oops. Duplicate yata slide. Duplicate. Delete ko na lang to. Okay? So we go on to the sources of forces in FBT. Okay? So different, when you see a problem or a diagram, you will see a different variety of forces na pwede mong i-consider dun sa analysis mo. But for now, Marami yan, actually. But for now, we would be considering 4. Okay? 4 muna. For now, then tsaka natin dagdagan pag comfortable na tayo. The first is the weight. Okay? So the weight is the force of gravity that is always pointing downward, equal to the product of the particle's mass and the acceleration due to gravity. And acceleration due to gravity. Okay? So for most of the problems that has a mass or identified na may mass yung particle, the force of the weight is applied at all times, even if hindi na siya sinabi sa problem. Okay? Kasi yun ang assumption since we are always basing that our problem is based on Earth. So pag based on Earth yung problem mo, there would always exist a gravitational attraction between the object and the Earth. Okay? However, if your problem set it is in another planet, we will consider the ratio of gravitational attraction with respect to Earth. Okay? So, if nasa ibang planeta yung problem natin, you would see something like the gravity on Jupiter is 5 times or 6 times maybe of that of Earth. Okay? So you would apply that factor, that 6 times or that 5 times dun sa computation mo ng weight. Okay? Because weight is equal nga sabi niya, mass times acceleration due to gravity on Earth. Ulit natin. Okay? So, teka lang. If may nakikita ko yung ganito, that's my reminder to stretch once in a while. No? So you can do that para hindi kayo... Parang reminder ko lang siya to take a break once in a while. Okay? So yeah, so acceleration due to gravity on Earth. So kung wala sa Earth, there would be some form of ratio comparing that acceleration to Earth, and you will apply that para lumaki or lumiit yung weight nyo. Okay? Example niyan is ganito. For example, meron kang apple. Kahit hindi sinabi sa problem, there will exist if Fg or force of gravity on that apple, direction is pointing downward always or to the ground. Magnitude naman niya would be equal to m times g or mass times gravitational acceleration. And that will be equal to your weight force. Okay, so some students like to use W for weight. Yung iba naman gusto F sub G kasi gusto nila lagi naka-F. F something yung forces para hindi sila malito kung ano yun. So, nasa sa inyo yan kung ano yung labels na gamitin nyo. You can use F sub G or you can use W. So, saan kayo hindi mas malilito? Okay, any question po?
Wala po.
Okay, so that's the first. Next is springs naman. So, springs are mechanical components wherein if you apply a force dun sa spring, it will cause the spring to have an elongation if you are pulling it away from the spring, or contraction if you are compressing the spring. Okay? So, depende sa direction kung compression siya or elongation, magkakaroon siya nito, plus S, which is yung elongation or deformation niya from its LO or original length. Okay? And that ratio of elongation, this amount of elongation, will allow us to solve for the effective force acting on the spring using the formula F equals Ks. Okay? Where K is the property of the spring called the spring constant or spring stiffness or coefficient of stiffness ng spring. And that with the measured elongation or deformation of the spring will give you the force of the spring. Okay? So, for systems na may spring, you can use this to get the equivalent force acting on the particle. Okay, so questions po?
None po.
Okay, so third component that we will use for now would be cables and pulleys. Dagan natin ng ropes. Okay, so cable, ropes, and pulleys, first assumption muna natin, they have negligible weight. Okay? And they cannot stretch. Okay? Because once they stretch, or in reality kasi, may stretching talaga mangyayari sa mga cables and ropes. Minsan maliit lang, minsan malaki. For example, rubber band, you can stretch it for a very big stretch. Okay? Pero yung mga nylon nyo, imagine nyo lang yung mga sampayan ng damit, di ba? Pag sinasampayan nyo siya, lumulundo siya or nagsasag siya dun sa gitna. Which means, nasa-stretch siya. Kasi sinabitan nyo siya ng damit or ng labada. Okay? For our problems, we would assume that would not happen because we are assuming that these cables are rigid. Okay? So if you would remember yung rigid, when something is rigid, when you apply a force on it, it will not deform, it will not elongate, it will not change shape, pero it will absorb that force and will para exert a reaction force to balance that force. And yun yung nangyayari sa mga cable and ropes natin. Okay? So they are rigid and they have negligible weight. Okay? Tignan natin dito. Okay. Next assumption or next condition. Ropes can support tension or pulling force. Okay? So pag may ropes tayo, lagi tayong sa paghila or sa paghigit ng cable. Kasi never naman, unlike spring na pwede mo i-compress, yung cables and ropes natin, hindi naman siya, pag kinocompress mo siya, sa slack lang siya. No? Hindi naman siya hindi kanya lalabanan or hindi kanya kokontrahin pag kinompress mo siya. Pero pag hinila mo siya or stretch mo siya, doon ka makakuha ng reaction force or yun yung nilalabanan ng rope yung paghila mo by creating tension. Okay? And the direction of that force would always be in the direction of the cable. Okay? So, lagi tayong tension or sa pahila or sa pa-stretch direction ng rope and the direction of that force is the direction of the cable or rope. Okay? Third thing naman to take note is pag meron kayong cables and ropes, the tension force is constant throughout the length. Okay? So kung anong tension niya sa isang end, yun din yung tension niya sa isa pa. Okay? So hindi po yan dapat, hindi yan nagbabago. Kung same rope siya, kung isang buong rope yan, yung tension mo sa isang end, kahit gaano kahaba yan, would be the tension on another part of the rope. Okay? Question po. Demo muna. Dito muna tayo sa nasa left side. Right side pala. Ito nakaselect. So sa right side, we have a row. We have a pulley here. So the pulley, the purpose of the pulley is just to allow the rope to change direction. Okay? Pero hindi niya papalitan or i-affect yung amount of tension dun sa rope natin. So, pang-change direction lang yung purpose niya for this. For now. Pero later on kasi, may mga reaction forces din yan na experience. Okay, but for today's discussion, ang purpose nyo lang would be to change the direction of the rope. Okay. So first assumption, sabi kanina, negligible weight, tapos dapat rigid. Okay, so we would assume this rope do not have weight and it is rigid. Second naman, can only support a tension or pulling force, and this force always acts on the direction of the cable rope. Kaya makikita nyo dito, for this vertical section of the rope, the force vector is pointing downward to cause tension sa rope, and the direction is downward because the rope is vertical along the length of the rope. For this section naman, na naka-angle theta siya, the direction is this direction because this is the direction that will cause tension on the rope. Okay? But the direction now, since nag-iba ng direction yung rope ko, naka-angle na ngayon yung direction ng vector. Okay? Naka-angle theta na rin siya with respect to the horizontal. So it adjusts. Kung saan naka-point yung rope or cable, din magpo-point yung force vector natin. And the third one, subject to a constant tension throughout the length. So kung may tension force dito sa part na to yung rope na T, that would also be the magnitude of the tension or the force dito sa other end kahit na nag-iba siya ng direction. Okay. So any location or any point of the rope, kung T yung tension sa isang part, T pa rin yung magiging tension niya anywhere else. Okay, question po or clarifications sa concept ng rope and cables.
Wala po.
Okay, kung wala po, dito naman tayo sa left image. So, bigyan natin siya ng context. Okay? A 5 kilogram plate is suspended by 2 straps. So, straps, just same lang siya ng cable. A, B, and B. To find the force in each strap, we should consider the free body diagram of the plate. Okay? So, free body diagram of the plate. So, plate yung ating item of concern. Hindi yung rope, hindi yung nut or yung connection dito, but the plate. Okay, so these forces acting on it are concurrent at the center. Okay, concurrent at the center. Okay, remember concurrent means that the forces or the vectors are meeting at or tending towards one point. Okay, so ibig sabihin, for this case, if the forces are meeting at or tending towards one point, then we would assume that our plate, kahit gaano pa kalaki yan, or kahit ano pang shape niyan, we will reduce it to a single point. Okay, isang point lang siya, and we would assume that our forces are acting or intersecting on that point. Okay, so paano po natin gagawin yan? So, apat yung na-discuss natin na components or support types or sources of force in a FPD for now, apat. Weight, springs, cables, and may isa pa pala. Okay, so for now, weight, spring, and cable muna. Okay? So, sabi natin, so the weight muna, yung weight muna tayo, that's always pointing downward. So, makita mo dito, pointing downward. And yung value niya of the force would be mass times G or mg. So, that's 5. Yung mass times G, which is 9.81. Okay. Now, for the cables and pulleys naman, alam natin sa figure that we have 2. Okay? However, since we are drawing the free body diagram, sabi dito, free body diagram of the plate, then plate yung magiging reference natin. Okay? Ibig sabihin, insert sheet. Ito, yung area of concern ko. Fill, outline, weight. Yan. So, yan yung area of concern ko. Okay, so ano daw forces yung nag-act with respect to this plate lang. Okay? And with respect to the plate, we have ropes, di ba? And sabi natin, yung rope can only, saan na yun? Can only support a tension or pulling force. Tapos ang direction is direction of the cable and rope. Okay? So for this system, if this is my reference, to create tension sa ropes ko, direction muna. The direction is along the length of the rope. So if makikita nyo dito, the direction is naka-angle siya, A and B, kasi dito naka-angle din A and B. Okay? Now the direction, bakit po pointing outward yung tension natin or yung force ng cables and ropes? It's because since we are considering the plate as our system, the direction na we are looking for the cables is the direction that will cause tension with our object. Okay, since the plate is our object, we are need to pull away from the object para magka-tension yung rope. So, kaya both A and B, ang direction nila is away from the object para ma-feel ng object natin or nung plate yung tension force. Okay? Kasi nga, pag other way around, the rope will not compress or it will not create a resistance to our compression. So, lagi siyang tension. Kaya, away from the object yung ating tension. Tapos yung sinasabi naman niya na concurrent, it means that you can assume that your object or yung plate mo, you can reduce that to a single point. Ito, that lang siya. And lahat ng forces mo, you can connect doon sa that na yon as long as that is within their line of action. Okay? So nabanggit natin sa vectors yung line of action, which is the line kung saan naka-direct or naka-turo yung arrow mo. You can move your vector along that line without changing its effect on your object. Okay? So originally, narito yung B, tsaka narito yung A. So minove natin siya towards dun sa point O. And yung mass, yung weight din, minove natin dito sa gitna, sa point na gitna. And then ginawa natin siyang center or origin point para lahat ng vectors natin are concurrent or makakadikit na sila dun sa isang point. Then that would be our free body diagram for this system. Okay, because we have identified yung mga acting forces sa system natin, which are the weight and the tension forces because of the rods. Tapos kinonnect natin siya, lahat ng tails nila into one point to make them concurrent. And then dito na papasok yung pagkuha natin ng summation of forces equals to 0 because we are assuming that this object is in equilibrium. Okay, so doon na papasok yung, pag may values na to, doon na papasok yung vector operations natin. Okay, question po?
None po.
2 o'clock na agad, ang bilis ng oras. Okay? So sa ngayon, wala pa tayong values. Wala pa tayong sinosolve. We are just building the free body diagram based on these 4 components or 4 sources of forces. Okay? And the fourth source is smooth contact. For smooth contact naman, any object that is touching another object or any object that is resting on a smooth surface, there will exist sa surface na yon a force on the object that is normal to the surface at the point of contact. Okay? So again, nakita nyo na to dati, yung figure na to. when you have two marbles, for example, object 1 and object 2, there will exist an equal but opposite reaction force dito sa contact point ng object 1 and 2 na nagkokontrahan, opposite directions, pero same magnitude. And yun yung mag-create ng equilibrium between the two objects. Kasi since balance sila, walang nanalo. Parang hindi lamang si object 1, hindi lamang si object 2. Equal sila and balanced, pero may force. May force pero balanced. So pag summation mo sila, zero. So equilibrium yung system. And the direction of that force, they are opposite, but they are normal, or pag sinabing normal, perpendicular dun sa surface at the point of contact. Okay? So you would see that better. For example, meron kang box or object on top of a surface or table. If the system is in equilibrium ibig sabihin, nakapatong lang yung object sa table, hindi siya bumabagsak, no? So equilibrium siya because it remains at rest. Pero there exists a normal force. Dalawang way mo siya pwedeng tingnan. Okay? Pwede mo siyang tingnan as normal force acting on the object by the table. So ito yung force na table yung nag-exert towards the object. And meron ding normal force na acting on the table by the object. So ito naman yung force na ine-exert ng object sa table mo. They are opposite in direction, but they are normal or perpendicular to the surface. Okay? Bakit dot lang to? Box yan. Because again, we are assuming that we can reduce the object into a single dot or single particle. And yung forces natin would be concurrent or nagpa-pass through siya dun sa point na yun. Okay? So sabi dyan, if you need help, ask for it. So if may question kayo, just feel free to ask. Okay? Next ito. Another example, meron kang libro or sa ibabaw ng table. Okay? So the system, the book and table are in equilibrium because nakapatong lang siya to. It remains at rest. Okay? Pero there exists a normal force acting on the book na in-exert ng table. So that's your normal force. Ito yon, acting on the object by the table. So yung normal force acting on the book exerted by the table, and there's an opposite equal force na acting on the table exerted by the book. Okay, which is yung downward force, which is, for this case, would be the weight of the book. Okay. So for our analysis, depende yung normal force kung ano yung object na nire-reference mo. But for most of our objects, it would be perpendicular dun sa object at the perpendicular dun sa surface at the point of contact. Tapos ang direction ng normal force would be always towards dun sa object na ina-analyze mo. Because it is the force that is acting on the object by the surface.
In this video, I'm going to
Okay? So you are considering your object as the bida. Okay? Bida yung object mo. And i-account mo lahat ng forces acting on it. Okay? So, what is the weight? What is the normal force by the surface acting on the object? So that would be towards the object, perpendicular. Tapos, dapat dumadaan siya dun sa contact surface. Okay, any question po dito?
Wala
Okay,
po.
so laging iisipin, ang aking tine-check ay yung object ko. Or depende kung ano yung nasa problem. Yung object ko yung reference. So, dapat forces acting on that object by other things. Okay? So, siguro kailangan ng practice yan para hindi kayo malito. Pero we'll get there. Okay? So, example tayo na sama-sama siya. Okay? So example, next problem. We have a wheel. Tapos nakahang siya on a rope. Tapos nakalapat siya or may contact siya with an inclined surface na 30 degrees incline. Okay? So first we analyze alin dun. So our analysis revolves muna dun sa apat na weight. Ano yun? Weight, ropes, normal force, springs. So weight, spring, ropes, and cables. Tapos yung fourth is yung smooth contact or yung normal force. Okay? So the system natin, our object of concern is itong wheel. Okay? So imagine yung wheel, I reduce that to a dot. Or parang imagine ko, dot lang siya. Wala siyang shape, dot lang siya. Tapos ano yung mga forces nag-a-act on the wheel? Okay? So the first is, meron ba siyang weight component or weight force? So yes, meron, because ang assumption natin is may mass siya and nasa earth siya. So the mass component, mass weight would always be downward. Tapos ang magnitude niya naman is yung m times g. Okay? Actually, at this point, hindi pa tayo concerned sa magnitude. Directions lang tayo muna. Okay? So the weight component, lagi siyang downward. So this is that one. Tapos ang direction, downward away, parang pointing towards earth. So that's our weight. Second component is springs. So meron ba siyang spring? Wala. So we skip the springs. Third component would be the ropes and cables. So meron ba siyang ropes and cables? So kita natin dito, meron. Okay? And since we are analyzing the wheel yung concern natin, we would consider, well, a direction. Well, ang direction, along the rope, sabi natin. Kung anong direction ng rope, that's the direction. Pero yung kung saan nakapoint yung arrow, we would consider a direction that will cause tension or stretching dun sa ating reference with respect to our reference object. So that means the direction of my tension force or rope force to the rope would be upward or this direction because that is the direction that would cause stretching or tension with respect to my object or my wheel. Kaya naging ganito yung orientation. And the fourth one is the smooth contact or normal force. So I know that my wheel is in contact with a surface at this point. So my normal force would be normal or perpendicular to my object, to my surface at this point. And yung direction niya would be acting on the object by the surface. Kaya, towards the object, yung direction ng end force ko. Okay? So that's how you build. So when you build that, you would see na merong intersection or you would find the intersection of all your forces in your diagram and that would be yung origin or 0, 0 nyo sa inyong Cartesian representation. And after that, since identify mo na lahat ng forces, i-apply mo na ngayon yung summation of forces equal to 0 to solve for the unknown element dito sa problem natin. Okay, so any question po sa pag-analyze or sa pag-identify ng mga forces na nag-act sa system natin?
Wala po, sir.
Galing, no? Uno standing pa rin. Okay, so next naman. So, just to give you a general method of how to do this, first is i-draw nyo muna yung system. Minsan kasi walang drawing. Minsan kayo ang magagawa ng drawing. Okay, so you draw the system with the correct directions of the ropes, kung meron ba siyang surface, okay, kung may spring ba siya, saan ba naka-orient yung spring, so i-draw nyo muna siya. After that, you identify na kung ano yung mga nag-a-act na forces on the particle. Okay? So this is important because it would dictate yung direction nung forces natin. Kasi kung hindi, for example dito, if hindi yung wheel, yung object of concern ko, mag-iiba yung direction ng T, yung rope tension, tsaka nung N, yung normal force ko. Possible. Okay? So you always look at the problem with respect dun sa particle. Okay? Next, after you identify all the forces, you identify kung ano yung i-label mo na siya, yun nga, yung direction niya, kung saan siya nag-a-act, okay? So basically, dito kasi sa una, show all forces, identify mo muna kung ano yung forces. Pero dito sa identify, lalagay mo na yung direction, tsaka yung orientation niya, dun sa iyong free body diagram. Okay? So yun naman, draw nyo muna kung hindi siya nakadrawing. Pag nakadrawing na siya, identify nyo yung mga existing. So 4 lang muna yan for now. Weight, springs, ropes or cables, and smooth surface or yung surface contact. 4 lang muna. And pag na-identify nyo na nag-exist yun, you draw it showing kung ano yung direction tsaka magnitude niya kung meron. Then after that, i-apply nyo na yung summation of f equal to 0 using your vector operation techniques. Okay, so sample tayo. So the sphere in the figure has a mass of 6 kilograms and is supported as shown. Okay, so draw a free body diagram of the sphere, the cord, and the knot at C. Okay, so dito papasok yung importance ng kung ano yung kino-consider mong particle sa problem. Ano yung kino-consider mong object of concern or object of interest. Okay? So start muna tayo na yung sphere, yung object of interest natin. So kung sphere yung object of interest natin, let's identify kung ano yung gumaganang forces dun sa system natin. Again, our choices natin ay weight, spring, cable or tension, and yung smooth surface or normal force. Okay, so tawagin ko na siya normal force tsaka tension force, yung cable and pulley. So weight force, spring force, tension force, normal force. Okay, so alin dun sa 4 yung nag-exist for the sphere? Okay, so may weight ba yung sphere? Since we are given a certain mass, then we can solve or we can assume na may nag-exist na weight force sa ating sphere. So check. Don't worry muna about the magnitude. But the existence muna yung gusto kong i-point out na merong weight force. Second is spring. Okay? Kita ko may spring dito sa system. Pero with respect to sphere, wala namang interaction or direct connection yung spring dun sa sphere. Which means walang effect or direct effect yung spring dito sa sphere ko. So wala akong spring force. Next is yung tension force. Okay, so I see from my diagram na may connected rope ako dun sa sphere ko. So ibig sabihin meron akong tension force acting on my sphere directed away from the sphere because that's the direction that will create tension with my object of concern. Okay, kasi ang idea gusto ko laging nakastretch yung rope. Kaya away from the ball or the sphere para ma-stretch. Okay. And the fourth one naman, yung normal force. So I saw from the drawing that my sphere is resting on 2 inclined surfaces. Okay, if you would analyze that further or zoom in, you would see na the surface is touching or in contact with the sphere at 2 points. Isa sa left side, isa sa right side, at an angle na 30 degrees from the vertical. Okay? So I would have 2 normal forces acting on my sphere, oriented na 90 degrees or perpendicular sa surface ko, tapos pointing towards my sphere because that is the force acting on my sphere by the surface. Okay, kaya siya towards the sphere. Okay, so most of the time, well, pag normal force naman, most of the time, lagi siyang towards the object of concern. Tapos yung ropes or yung tension force, most of the time then, pointed siya away from the object of concern. So for this system, I have three forces acting on it. One is the weight force, second is the tension force, and third is the normal force acting on two locations on my sphere. Okay, question po. Okay, so that one is for the sphere. Ano naman kung ang ina-analyze ko is yung CE? CE ay the chord, CE. CE. Okay, so remember for CE, we are not actually analyzing the entire length CE. Okay, but we are analyzing the rope itself, yung portion in between C and E. Okay, in between lang siya kasi rope naman siya eh. So sabi natin sa rope, uniform tension everywhere. Kung anong tension sa isang part, yun din yung tension sa ibang part. Depende na lang yung direction, kung mag-iba yung direction ng rope. Okay, so for the rope itself, you can say, nasa ilalim, you have a sphere, nakasabit. Okay, so the sphere is acting as a one-hole element that is creating or exerting a force on chord CE. Okay, kaya may downward force dito. Because it's causing a stretch. Basically, tension pa rin naman. It's because it's causing a stretch dun sa part rope CE natin. Okay, and to balance that, magkakaroon din ng upward equal opposite reaction force on the upper section of chord CE equal to the force exerted by the sphere on chord CE. Kasi kailangan, sabi natin for equilibrium, equal and opposite reaction. Kasi kailangan mag-summation of forces equals 0 eh. So kailangan opposite sila. Tapos same magnitude para mag-0. Okay? For point C naman, point C itself, yung may connection kasi doon. So we analyze naman our system focusing on point C as our point of interest or particle of interest. Okay? So for point C, again, part siya ng rope. Okay? So we analyze again, meron ba siyang weight, spring, tension, or normal force. Okay? One is weight. So meron ba siyang weight? Wala siyang weight. Bakit? Because it's part of the rope. Okay? Wala naman siyang mass. And ang assumption natin sa rope is negligible mass. Okay? So 0 ang ating negligible mass. So kahit mass times gravity mo siya, 0 times gravity, 0 weight force pa rin yung masosolve. So wala siyang weight force. Okay? Spring naman, we can see na may spring na directly connected dun sa point C natin. Okay? So, based on the drawing kasi, you are the one, kasi initially, hindi natin alam yung force ng spring. Kasi hindi pa naman natin sure kung compression ba siya or elongation. So mag-a-assume ka muna in the start of a direction for the force of the spring. Pwede kang mag-assume based sa drawing, yung parang feeling mo, feeling ko ganito to, or ganito yung force ng spring. Kasi mag-stretch siya, ganyan-ganyan. So you can assume. And you may be correct, pero okay lang if your assumption is wrong. Kasi when you solve it naman, the sign of your answer, of your result, will tell you if the original assumption is correct. Okay? So it will correct itself if mali man yung assumption mo ng direction. For the spring, Okay? So, kung mali man yung assume direction mo, that your result will tell you na mali yung assumption mo. But initially, wala ka pang idea kung stretching or compressing itong spring na to. Okay? Depende kasi kung stretching o compressing, yung magiging direction no force of the spring mo, yung spring force mo. Kung compressing kasi yan, then the spring would exert pulling force dun sa point C mo. Kasi nagko-compress siya, so hihilahin niya to the right yung point C. Kasi nagko-compress siya. If your spring naman is elongating, baliktad, sorry. If your spring is compressing, if your spring is compressed, hindi pala compressed. If your spring is compressed, lalabanan niya yung compression. Kasi gusto niyang bumalik sa original length niya eh. Kinumpress mo, gusto niya original length siya. So if the spring is compressed, it will exert a force towards C. Okay? Kasi tutulak niya ulit yung C. Gusto niya mag-original length. Okay? So your force mo sa C would be to the left if it is compressing. If it is compressed. If your spring naman is stretched, okay, it will try to go back to its original length. Okay? Kasi in-extend mo siya. Gusto niya bumalik sa original length. So it will pull point C to the right. Kasi hihilahin niya yung point C to the right para bumalik siya sa original length niya. Okay, so your direction of force, spring force, would change depende kung extended or stretched or compressed yung spring. But again, you can do your best guess and during the solution of the problem, lalabas na lang kung tama ba or mali yung assumption. Okay? So spring force, yes, existing siya sa system natin. The third naman would be the cable and pulley. Cable and rope pala, force, tension force. So for point C, with respect to point C, I can see na two sections of rope are acting on point C. Okay? So there's the section na CE, itong pababa, and yung section na BC, itong nasa taas na portion. Okay? So the direction of my tension forces would be the directions of the ropes. So kung yung portion sa BC would be angled, same direction as BC. Yung portion na CE, since it's downward, so that direction would be downward din. Yung arrows naman, kung saan siya nakaturo, it is based on the direction that would cause a tension or stretching sa rope natin with respect to point C. Okay, so para ma-stretch yung rope natin with respect to point C, your tension force sa BC should be pointing upward. Your tension force sa CE should be pointing downward. Okay, kaya po pataas at pababa yung direction ng tension natin or ng force due to cable or rope. Okay? And then the fourth element naman is yung normal force, yung due to contact. If for point C, it's not in contact or touching any surface naman. So wala tayong normal force or contact force for point C. So ang nag-exist lang sa point C, in conclusion, would be the spring force and dalawang tension forces. So kaya ganito yung kakalabasan na free body diagram ng system natin. Okay, and then based na lang sa given na values, you would try to solve for the summation of forces. You would try to achieve summation of forces equal to 0 para ma-maintain yung equilibrium ng system. Okay, so question po.
Wala pa naman po.
Galing oh. Ang standing talaga. Okay, so last one naman. Once you finish drawing your free body diagram. That's the point when you execute yung summation of f equal to 0. And most of the time, the method that we would use is through yung Cartesian components niya. So yung forces natin would break down into its I component and j component, and you would solve for those independently. So summation of forces along I and the summation of forces along along j should be equal to 0 for us to achieve equilibrium of the particles. So this one, itong actual solving natin, this one we will do face-to-face next week sa classroom. Okay? So last slide na po to. Any question po about all of this?
Wala naman po.
Okay. So kung wala po, actually that's it lang for today. And yun, so I would be checking your quiz 2 na this week. Hindi ko pala sabi. I would be releasing din yung problem set 1, which is all about vectors this week. Hindi ko pa pala nabubuo yun. Pero siguro, basta I'll give you 1 week to do that. So kung ibigay ko siya ng weekday, halimbawa Wednesday, next Wednesday din yung submission niya. Online naman pa rin. Online pa rin siya, pero I would require na for you to write it on a yellow sheet of paper para uniform. Since mas mahaba yun, mas marami yung problems kaysa sa quiz. Pero all about vectors, yung topic niya. So I will upload na lang this week. Any day ko siya masubmit, I will give you 1 week to do that. And then upload nyo lang ulit sa classroom before the week, that 1 week time. That would be your problem set 1. And then next week naman would be yon, solving tayo on equilibrium of particles. Okay po, any question or any concern before we end? Okay, kailangan ko pala kayong picturean. Okay. Okay. If no more questions, that's it for today and see you next week. Face to face tayo. Yung araw ba tayo face to face na lang? Face to face natin ay... hindi pa. Anong sabi sa ano nyo pala? Tawag dito. Machine shop? Sunday na daw ba siya? Yes po, Ma'am Sir Alvin.
Sir, inaayos pa daw po ang sked kasi ang kokonti lang daw po at ang nabiling gagamitin for mock shop. So, hindi pa din po sure if gagawin pong Saturday, Sunday, or buong Sunday po.
So, hindi nyo pa rin sure next week kung Saturday o Sunday yung face-to-face nyo?
Opo, sir. Pero parang Saturday po ay may quiz po kami sa Terma. So, baka face-to-face po yun since wala man pong nasabi if gagawing Sunday ang termo.
Ang term mo ga ay yung 7 to 8:30?
Yes po, sir.
Okay. Sige. So, for now, tentatively, Saturday, diba schedule natin 2 na? Saturday, Sunday.
Ang sked po nating face-to-face, sir, is every Saturday po sadya. Na-adjust
So,
nga lang po gawa
Saturday,
ng workshop.
CIT 501. So, for now, until wala pa yung announcement, Saturday ang ating face-to-face next week. Then, online yung Sunday. Unless mag-change on the week, then discuss natin sa GC. Okay? So, if no more questions, yun lang po. And thank you for attending. And goodbye po.
Thank you po, sir.